In this video, I'm going to give you my first impressions of using the new Elinchrom LED 100C. It's both bicolor and full RGB. Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm excited to share my first impressions of the brand new Elinchrom LED 100C continuous light. Now, before we dive in, I want to be fully transparent with you. I am one of two global ambassadors for Elinchrom, and they did send me these two lights. My goal for today is to share with you the specs, some technical stats, and how the light performed in a real-world shoot with Samanta and while shooting video. I will break down the lighting for each look too, so even if you're not interested in this light, I'm sure that you'll learn something by the end of this video. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get started. The Elinchrom LED 100C is a 100-watt bicolor continuous LED light designed for photographers, videographers, and content creators. It has a color temperature range from 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin and a CRI rating of 95+. It also offers 50 watts of RGB capabilities and over a dozen preset video lighting effects that can enhance your visual storytelling, and features a built-in 72 watt-hour battery that can power the light for approximately 40 minutes at full strength. In the US, it comes with a USB-C 100-watt power supply, which allows you to power and charge the unit on set. And finally, it has an intuitive touchscreen control panel that makes adjusting settings super straightforward, whether you're setting your Kelvin temperature or dialing in custom RGB values. After spending a day shooting with these lights, here are my big takeaways so far. First, I love the flexibility when it comes to modifiers. Right out of the box, the LED 100C fits Elinchrom's OCF system, which is the same mount as ProPhoto, and with the included adapter, it can connect to Elinchrom's standard mount system. So if you already have a collection of modifiers, whether they're Elinchrom or ProPhoto, you're good to go. While the internal battery is a nice feature, at full 100-watt output, you're only going to get about 40 minutes of use, and that's not a lot of time for an entire photo shoot or a video session. So realistically, you'll want to plan to run the lights off of AC power when you're in the studio. However, the battery does give you added built-in flexibility, which you won't find with many competing units. Most of them take an external battery that you have to pay extra for, and, some of them do. And I don't know of any that have it built in, but correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I have to say that working with LEDs, though, sometimes gives me a lot of anxiety. I have a sort of photographer PTSD from growing up shooting film when just a small increase in ISO really meant a big reduction in image quality and a lot more grain. So I have to get used to shooting at higher ISOs. However, after reviewing the images from my test shoot with Samanta, I found that the files held up extremely well, even though I was shooting at as high as ISO 2000. There was plenty of dynamic range in the images, and I was able to pull out detail in her black hair in post using Capture One. In addition, there was very low noise throughout the images, which I captured with my Canon R5 Mark II. Now, according to some very nerdy technical tests on photons to photos, ISO 2000 is where the camera begins to record fewer than 8 stops of dynamic range, which I believe is similar to what our monitors can display. So going higher makes me worry about black details because we would record fewer stops of information than our screens can show. But I'm not really sure if that's true or matters. So maybe we can in fact go higher with our ISO and still get plenty of detail in our blacks and have flexibility in post. If you have any experience with this or better understanding, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Even if it's just that you have shot at ISO 6400 and saw flexibility in the files in post, just let me know. Likely due to my Studio Titan camera stand, I lost very few images to motion blur, and I was able to get ample depth of field for my subject matter. One thing is when you're shooting at slower shutter speeds, like I was around 1/125th of a second to 1/200th of a second, sometimes your hand movements and your moving while gesturing can affect the sharpness of the images, as I covered in a previous video, which you might want to check out. But using the camera stand or a tripod is a good way to eliminate that movement that the photographer you're making, and that way you'll hopefully get sharper images when shooting at slower shutter speeds. Overall, this experience that I had gives me a lot of confidence working with continuous lighting in the future, so I'm definitely going to do it more. I also conducted some technical tests with my Sekonic C800 color spectrometer and my Sekonic L858 light meter. Starting with color accuracy, the results were very encouraging. In fact, my spectrometer readings showed that the CRI approached 97, which is higher than the published spec of 95, so this means the light produces accurate, natural-looking colors. Moving on to brightness, I tested the light with various modifiers at 1 meter. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Elinchrom markets the 100C as producing 100 watts of bicolor output and 50 watts of RGB output, so the drop in brightness when switching to full color is completely expected and in line with the design of the light. Now that we've got all that technical stuff out of the way, let's talk about some real-world experience that I had during a test shoot with Samanta. Now, my studio has blackout curtains, so I'm able to control all of the light in the room, and you're going to want to do that when you're using LED lighting for portraits. When we're using overhead lights, a lot of times if they aren't entirely accurate, they can contaminate our images. For instance, in my studio, the overhead lights are probably 4,000 or 4,500 Kelvin and slightly green. So if I had those turned on, it would affect the exposure. And if I had daylight coming in through the windows, it would affect the exposure too. So you're going to want to control the light in the room that you're in. Also, I'll link to all the gear that I'm using in the description. If you click on those links, it will actually help me to make a small commission. It won't cost you anything, so please do that to support me making more videos like this one. So for the first look, I boomed an Elinchrom 17-inch or 40-centimeter silver beauty dish out over the center of the set, and then I turned a V-flat from V-flat World into a table, and I placed some mylar on top. Then I turned a second light towards the background and added a diffusion sock to the beauty dish. Now, the reason why I did this is because there is no deflector hole that I'm aware of in the front of the LED 100C, and so the only way to use a high efficiency modifier like this would be probably with the sock. Otherwise, you'll have very harsh direct lighting. I then repositioned the background light and tuned it to red. Then Nicole, the hair and makeup artist that I was working with, made some adjustments to the hair. I also adjusted the main light to make sure that there were catch lights, and we perfected the pose. One of the test shots actually turned out to be pretty cool when Samanta was just looking down at the mylar, and here it is retouched, and hopefully you'll like it as well. For the second look, we switched the backdrop to powder blue. I assembled a 70 centimeter deep octabox and a 35 by 100 centimeter strip softbox. I then placed an LED 100C in my 70 centimeter octa and turned it over into RGB mode and then tuned it to color 280, which is magenta. Then I placed another light in the strip softbox, and this time I tuned it to 180, which is teal. I then removed the outer diffusion from the 70 centimeter octa in order to get about one more stop of output, and I moved the two lights closer together. Once Samanta was on set, I shot some test frames. I added a V-flat on camera left for fill and adjusted the position of both lights. We actually had her change her outfit. Originally, she was wearing a skirt as a top, but it didn't look that great. So we had her go back to the top that she had in the previous look, and this time wear the skirt that matched as a skirt. I then backed up to capture more of the scene and perfected the pose. For the third look, I wanted to create a colorful, glowing background. I positioned a 5-foot wide roll of Lee Filters Heavy Wide Frost Diffusion in the middle of the set. Then I placed my main light, a 100C, in a 35 by 100 centimeter strip softbox with a grid, and I was using the grid in order to keep this light from lighting up the diffusion. Then, behind the diffusion, I placed a gray seamless backdrop. Initially, I lit it blue using 4 Nanlite PavoTube version 2 30Cs. I then placed a 100C with a standard reflector on a light stand and aimed it back towards the camera. On my lens, I used a Tiffin 1/8 Black Pro mist filter in order to make that light coming through the background glow and create a little haze around her. I then added a V-flat for fill on camera left, but the results were less than ideal. I then tried using a 7-inch grid reflector and a grid on the 100C that was coming through the diffusion material. I also changed the color of the Pavo tubes to purple. Then I went back to using a standard reflector on that background light because unfortunately the shape that I was getting from the grid reflector was a little irregular. Finally, I added a Nanlite Forza 60C for fill, and I placed it on camera right and aimed it at the V-flat and turned it down to 33%, and I think you'll like the final results. So for the next segment, I want to give you a real-world comparison of how the Elinchrom 100C works while shooting video. I'm lit right now with a Nanlite FS150 in a 90 centimeter parabolic softbox placed 5 feet or 1.5 meters away from my face. And this is the normal way that I light my talking headshots here on YouTube. So this is now the Elinchrom 100C in my 100 centimeter or 39-inch deep octabox, my favorite softbox, the one I would own if I could only own one, and it's positioned at 5 feet or 1.5 meters away. So this is the Elinchrom 100C in a 70 centimeter or 27.5-inch deep octabox. The light is positioned at 5 feet away or 1.5 meters. So this is me. I'm being lit with the Elinchrom 100C in a 70 centimeter or the 70 centimeter deep octabox or 27.5 inches. The light is 1 meter or 39 inches from my face. Please let us know in the comments which one of these 4 options you think looks the best. So I personally decided to go with the 70 centimeter or 27.5 inch octa about 1 meter or so from my face or 39 inches. But I did one thing. I've decided to do one more thing, which is I'm turning on the overhead lights that are above me to give me a little bit of fill so that top of the shot up here won't be as dark and I'll have a little separation from the background. So as we wrap things up, continuous lighting has come a long way since I first started lighting videos in around 2008. Back then, LED panels were just coming into existence and tools like the Elinchrom 100C weren't even on the horizon. I love that photographers can now easily use continuous lights with the same modifiers we rely on to create top quality stills with flash. I hope you found this first impressions video helpful and that it gave you some useful ideas that you can apply in your own work. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you want to take your learning to the next level, I have a lighting handbook that's all about using colored light, so be sure to check that out as well. Remember to like, subscribe, and sign up for the bell. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.